Hey everyone, and welcome to the 8th episode of our Needle devlog. This time I'm going to show you what's new in Needle Engine 4.5, which has recently been released. So let's dive right in. So first off, we made it a lot easier to add custom model types to Needle Engine. And what that means is that you can define loaders for specific file types that Needle Engine does not have a built-in loader for, like Gaussian splats, STL files, or other things that you may want to load. And we now have an API to simply attach these loaders to Needle so that they're used in all the places where you can load things. An example of that is in our changelog, and I'm going to show it live as well. So let's head to our little StackBlitz sample page here. And here we are loading an STL file with the Needle Engine element. So this means on any page you're using Needle Engine, you may want to use other extensions, other file types than what Needle Engine ships with by default. And we ship with support for OBJ, GLTF, FBX, and a couple more. But STL is one of them that we don't have built into Needle Engine. And so what we can do now is in our main script file, basically before anything else loads, we can attach custom loaders to Needle Engine. Custom loaders mean a number of things. Like first off, we need to know which type of model is this. And if your server is correctly set up, then it will serve that file with a proper content type. So the response for a file coming from the network will have the right content type, and that would be model STL in that case here. If we don't have a content type, which is common if you're loading the file from a server that just serves the file and doesn't care about the extension, then we still may have a file extension, and that would be STL most of the time. And then there's a third fallback here to determine the type, which is used when you're just getting a blob, for example. A blob may not have a MIME type, a blob may not have an extension. And so what we're doing is we're checking the first few bytes of the file. And this is a very rough check. It can go wrong, but in many cases, it's good enough. And it's kind of the third fallback layer for loading this custom file. And then the core piece of it, basically when we know that this is the particular type of file that we want to load, then we can return a custom loader for it. And in this case, we're just using the STL loader that's shipping with three.js already. So it's imported at the top here from three.js examples. But this could be any other type of loader as well. Like this could be a Gaussian splat loader or something else that you want to bring into Needle Engine as kind of a native file format. And the cool thing is, by doing this, like by adding a custom loader to Needle Engine, it works in the Needle Engine element, as we're showing here. It works in drop listeners. So when you have drop listeners in your scene and you drop files on the page, that's going to use the same loaders. And it's also working in scene switchers. So scene switchers are a core component in Needle when you want to switch between different models. And those are also going to use these custom loaders. So one place, and then you can add new custom things to load to Needle Engine. Upon popular request, we have now added an API to change what the QR code shows when you open it from the QR code button from the Needle menu. And in practical terms, what that means is you can overwrite what happens when you press that QR code button on your page. QR codes are a very common way to get people from the desktop version of your app into the mobile version very quickly because they can just like scan it with their phone. And usually this QR code just points to the current URL that the page thinks it's at, which is often okay, but not always. Like, for example, on StackBlitz, this will point to this URL here, which is wrong because we want people to go to this URL here. And so what we can do now is basically after you told the Needle menu, I want a QR code, you can also tell it what URL to show. And so here I could put this one. And the page will reload. And now when we press the QR code button, this QR code points at the correct URL up here and not the one the page thinks it's at. And that applies as well to Needle Cloud and other places where you basically have embedded content in another page. So now you can properly point to the actual URL you want people to go. Could also be a product page, something else, YouTube, whatever. We've also shipped a performance improvement for very complex CHD scenes, for example, where you have a lot of parts, but they're not all moving all the time. Previously, when you had contact shadows enabled, which are these nice shadows that you get at the bottom of a model on the floor, then these contact shadows would be recalculated every frame. And with this option, you can opt into making that a manual process. So basically only updating them when you know you need it. For animated scenes, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like for an animated scene, you usually want the shadow to be in sync to what you're seeing in the scene. But as said, for like large, complex industrial scenes or its CHD files and so on, you may want to handle this manually for performance reasons. So now you can. We also made a couple changes to the way Needle Engine loads, which makes it even nicer integrated into the surrounding web pages. And I can show that in my example here as well. So the background that we have here, this gradient, is actually the page background. Like this is styled with CSS on the actual body of the page. And Needle Engine renders on top of this transparently. And what we've changed is that when you load Needle Engine now, the loading background stays transparent as well. And here it's too fast, like you only see the needle logo for a split second. So we can add a debug parameter here, debug loading rendering, to see that a bit slower. And you can see that this as well stays on a transparent background as well, making it even nicer to integrate into the page. And to show the transparent background in effect, we can go to the styles file here, where basically I have just specified a linear gradient here. So we can adjust that and see in real time how it changes. With this change, we also removed a couple of attributes that are now not needed anymore. For example, adjusting the background color of loading or what the text color is during loading. These things can now not be configured anymore. There have also been a couple of fixes that are very nice for the workflow. For example, we had some issues still outstanding when you were using Vite, as we were using in our default templates, and then changing scripts on the fly. And sometimes that led to cases where breakpoints in your code's execution didn't work anymore, or where you had slight issues with what's called hot module replacement. And we changed a couple of things about it so that now sitemaps are correctly updated, which was the main reason for breakpoints not working anymore. So now you can even more fluently adjust your scripts in real time, and hot module replacement will keep your page running, but use the new code that you just wrote and saved. We also fixed a couple of issues around debugging. When you want to get a detailed breakdown of the draw calls in your scene, we have a stats parameter that you can attach to your URL, and then detailed stats get logged. And there was a bug where this was not working correctly with post-processing in place. So now in a scene such as this, which uses ambient occlusion, you get better output here in the console for how many draw calls are in the scene, what's the geometry like, what am I actually rendering here. And another fix that we made was that find object of type did not search on the root of a scene, which is usually not a problem when you're using our Unity or Blender integrations. But when you're using Needle, as I was demonstrating just now, like directly from code, then you may want to attach components right at the scene root. And that now works correctly with our find methods as well. Another cool thing that we shipped is a big fat comparison page that gives an overview over a lot of different browser-based 3D engines. And it looks like this. It's on cloud.needle.tools/compare, or also on the homepage of Cloud. And here we compare a lot of different platforms with each other, not only in terms of like having a little checkbox for what's supported and not, but also having explanations for why we made that checkbox in a specific way. So for example, when we hover over like Babylon's made for the web support here, we get additional nodes that we collected, additional links that go to these tools pages, and so on. And we hope that this table can help you to make an educated choice for which platform to use for your next project. We understand it's always difficult to make like a non-biased table because obviously we think Needle is really well made for all kinds of projects on the web. But still, we try to be as unbiased as we can in this table to give you an overview of the ecosystem. There's more than 20 different platforms here that we are comparing in different categories, like what are their engine capabilities, what's the platform like, what's the workflow like, how does deployment work, how much hand-holding is there versus how much pre-made components can you use for your projects, how's performance, what kind of optimizations are built in, and so on. There's also subpages here for comparing specific solutions. This is very useful if you want to send it, for example, to a manager or to someone else on your team, to explain them, hey, we should really use Needle for this project because. And so you can just send them one of these direct comparison links so that they can take a look on their own. That's it for today's update. If you have any feedback or comments, please let us know. As always, you can find all the links I showed throughout this video in the video description. Thank you and see you next time.